sports conversation with James Navalance on the Believe Network. Joining us today, Nick Brinkerhoff, a friend of the program. New York sports teams, I would say they would be defined as the lesser half. That's how they would generally be preferred as, but um, I'll let him give a better description on those teams. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I was just saying hello to all my fans. There's so many of them over there, and then you just kind of stole my thunder like halfway through the intro. Like, you just reminded me of how emotionally down I am at the moment, and not really a huge fan of that. But yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Of course, of course. All right, so let's start with the most positive as we were describing this beforehand. Even though their offseason wasn't even so positive at times. The Mets. What's kind of your overall take on their offseason and then the expectations coming into this season?
Well, the expectations are pretty easy. Like Steve Cohen basically has said it since he came in. He's like World Series or bust, basically. Um, you look at a couple of years in the future, they were saying, "Oh, we want to have X amount of World Series by this point, and we want to compete for the division." And they did that for the majority of last year, and then the last couple of weekends of the season happen, and then all goes south, kind of like this episode is going to go as we progressively move through this.
For
Uh,
sure.
but overall expectations, you got to compete in the NL East. Obviously, Atlanta, Philly. Now, Atlanta got a little worse. They didn't really do a whole lot this offseason. Philly obviously making big moves, surprise run of the World Series. Um, Washington, dumpster fire. Miami, I'm not entirely sure what Miami's doing. They're just kind of building a team full of second basemen and hoping that they could just play everywhere. It's kind of funny to me. Should be fun to watch. Um, but as far as the Mets go, they got to compete for the division. They got to have a real chance at the World Series. That showing in the wild card round last year was a disgrace. As far as the team as a whole goes, I don't really know if they honestly got better. Like, sure, Degrom leaves, they bring in Justin Verlander, they bring in Kodai Senga, and they're making some moves to the pitching staff. They both start up the bullpen, but Steve Cohen kind of said it when they were going after Carlos Correa, like they needed another bat. They never really got that other bat. Like they're talking about, oh, let's go get one in the trade market. Who is that bat? Like, are you going to overpay for Brian Reynolds? Everybody keeps talking about Shohei Ohtani. Like, yeah, Cohen's got the checkbook ready to go. But as far as like this season goes, immediately going into it, I don't really see a whole lot that's necessarily different about this team right now. You're expecting some like young guys, kind of like Francisco Alvarez, if he's going to start on the opening day roster. Probably not. He's going to find himself in AAA. Brett Beatty might play left field a little, might play third base. They were talking about moving him to the outfield when Correa was on board. You're kind of just hoping that basically the team you had last year can kind of sustain the pace that they had in 2022. And I'm not entirely sure that that's sustainable. Like, you look at the team last year and they were on a ridiculous pace and almost historic pace at times. I'm not sure you can really expect that to be replicated. Like, is Edwin Diaz going to have the same kind of season that he had? We've obviously seen the worst of him in New York, and now we've seen is that the best of him? Is that what we expect going forward? And they paid a lot of money to a lot of guys, but in reality, they just upped their payroll to bring back largely the same team. Um, and then the other factor that goes into this season, baseball schedule change. Now, all of a sudden, you're not playing your division 19 times or whatever it was all season long. So every other Tuesday in June, when you're playing the Marlins and you get to beat up on them for fun, or teams like the Nationals, who they somehow struggled with, for a good portion of last year, and they surprisingly beat up on the Phillies. When you look back on it, it's kind of funny. But either way, you're taking those games against the bottom teams in the NL East, and now all of a sudden you're not playing those teams as much because you're playing everybody in baseball. So you're gonna get a little bit of everybody, and I think personally, from my perspective, I think that's great. Looking forward to it, but I'd maybe temper expectations just a little bit until let's see how they look around the trade deadline. But for the most part, right now, largely the same, but the expectations remain the same as well.
Yeah, I would say at least, and obviously, from the previous regime, at least you have the investment component, right? That's automatically there. They're investing all the money, and it's kind of, as you're saying, like it does feel like a lot of changing parts, but more of just a kind of retool of what it was. Old veteran pitching, really good high end, But will they ultimately stay healthy? Scherzer stay healthy for a whole year. Verlander, if they're durable and you got them, can Diaz replicate it? He was high end in Seattle and then just on the scene last year, really delivered on those expectations. Can young guys keep delivering? And, you have, again, bats, Alonso, Lindor, but you lose out on Correa, which sure, maybe the long-term component of that, who knows where that would have gone, but it was just money ultimately. Like you were going to get the production piece out of him immediately. But I think the good thing is like they're going to be constantly in it. At the deadline that they're going to be willing to be aggressive, and obviously every single offseason they're going to be in it financially. But I probably agree with you that like the expectations are World Series or bust, but the team might still not be kind of on that level of where it should be, like for let's say Los Angeles and Houston, where it's like no, they're legitimately World Series or best just on the roster construction of kind of they're showing the ability to kind of show that they've already done it.
And I think like the biggest part of that we kind of discount is that for the most part, this is still an upstart program with Steve Cohen. Like he hasn't been here 5 years. So we're only in like year three of this experiment now. In addition to the fact that when he kind of took over in that first year, we didn't really have like the full front office staff that was hired. We didn't really have a whole lot of consistency with the coaching staff at the time. Like you figure this is year two of Buck Showalter. This is year two of the guys that he brought in on his staff, the analytics guys that they're bringing in. Billy Epler, we had the revolving door at GM in that first year because everybody under the sun decided to get into legal trouble. And then, oh, this guy doesn't want to be here. And then this guy's getting arrested for this. And, before you knew it, we were hiring guys out of, the jury pool at the courtroom because, at least they were clean. But in reality, the Mets right now, they don't have Steve Cohen has said this himself. They don't have a great farm system. It was pretty shallow when he first got here. They're building that up over time. The team itself, if you look up and down the roster, I mean, I talked about before, you lose Jacob deGrom, you bring in Justin Verlander. Well, your top two paid guys on the team, Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer, aren't exactly, 25 and in the prime of their careers. Like they're on the downswing. They're still great. I mean, Justin Verlander's coming off a Cy Young, but at the same time, that's a lot of, hope that you have in health going over that entire season. And there's no way that those guys aren't going to miss time. So they've built up depth, which is a good thing. But the problem is that they're an older team and they're not in the same conversation, at least in terms of organization yet, as like the Dodgers and Astros, because they just have that sustainable success. The Mets are still trying to get to that point. That's not to say that they won't get there because I do think they will. They obviously have what it takes to get there. But as far as like one singular season goes, when it comes time to the trade deadline, they don't have those pieces that could stack up against those other organizations that have been there and done that before. Even though the Dodgers only won during a COVID season and we haven't seen much of them since, that's just me throwing my wisdom into the ring here. But much like the Yankees, they've been there since, the beginning of time. Like sliced bread wasn't even invented yet. They still have the same team for the most part. They still haven't gone anywhere. But, they're at the top of the World Series odds every single year. But that's what you expect. I think the Mets can be there. But I would just caution with health and a largely similar team from last year moving forward. But I'm looking forward to it regardless because if you're moving on after I finish this point, then it's just going to go downhill. So I'm going to try and hold on to some happiness as we get on with this.
Yeah, we're pretty much moving forward here and to better things in my perspective, maybe not as good in your perspective. But yeah, I think you bring up the best point though about the Mets. Like it is really year two of the transition into Steve Cohen. So like they're at the beginning of this thing and still have a really good team, really good roster, but it might not be the highest end yet, but they're kind of on that pathway to get there. Yeah, more fun stuff here. The Jets. Now, at least for the Jets, we can say this. Zach Wilson might have been exiled by his teammates, his organization. Everyone hates the guy. Not might have. I would say might. Well, he was, but he's still there, so not completely exiled just yet. But he's on his way out at some point here. Whether it's this year, they just keep him around just because. But I think they should ultimately get rid of him. That's my opinion. but they have a better year than they've had in so long. And obviously they start 7-4, full short, lose these remaining games, and it kind of fizzles out. Mike White at the end here. So overall, how do you obviously good defense, good team, Salah showing what he's capable of. Get rid of LaFleur, bring in Hackett. Maybe there's a guy in Green Bay that can come on over. Kind of what's your outlook here with the Jets? Kind of coming off a good year, but kind of fizzled out here at the end.
There's a lot about the Jets. There is just there's so much about this team. Um, Hot start to the year. The funny thing is, you go back to last offseason, and everybody always does that thing when they release the schedule. I believe it's usually around the draft, sometime in May when we get the schedule, and everybody does that thing where it's like, oh, okay, what do you think the team is going to finish with at the end of the year? What's their record going to be? Where do you think they are at the bye week? I mean, most fans will look at the schedule and be like, "Oh, I want to take this road trip," or "Thank God there's a bye week here." Um, and then obviously all the media is sitting there saying, "Oh, okay, well, there was people Jets were like, oh, they're going to be 2-9, and they're going to be like, or like maybe even just 0-9 going into that stretch of the season." And it was kind of the reverse when it was all said and done. They come out of the gates hot. The season felt kind of doomed right from the beginning of August when Zach Wilson went down with the knee injury against the Eagles. There's been a lot reported about that whole season in regard to the many injuries that Zach Wilson has faced, to his knees, especially. Whether or not that affected him, I'm not entirely sure. Actually, the big thing for me is just when you watch Zach Wilson, the one thing that always sticks out is that the game just always seems so much faster for him than anything else. Like, you see the talent, you see the flashes, especially when he's doing those off schedule plays, which is where he thrives. And he's rolling out of the pocket, he's moving around. He can make those throws, but then all of a sudden you ask him to sit in there and make some throws, or he starts facing pressure and adversity, and all of a sudden the entire game is gone. Um, I remember specifically the game against Detroit. He came out firing in the first half. Like, he was really good in that first half of that game against Detroit. He comes out second half, throws an interception, and it was like the entire operation just shut down. Obviously, Mike White was hurt at the time, and then you're looking at Mike LaFleur, Zach Wilson. Mike LaFleur is up in the booth all game long, and everybody's kind of. Some people have made mention of this. Some people have glossed over it. I think the biggest problem with the Jets is that they lost Greg Knapp, who unfortunately passed away uh, before Zach Wilson's rookie year in that very sad accident that had occurred when he was on his bike. And then they never really replaced him with anybody. That's the problem in regard to the football perspective of it. And when you don't replace somebody like that, and Mike LaFleur is coming in as a first-time play caller, and for the sake of discussion here, I actually like the comparison between the two New York teams. Robert Saleh comes in and he has an okay rookie year, more downs than ups. This year was more ups than downs for the most part, but he was still inconsistent, and I'm still not entirely sold on him. But he comes in and he hires Mike LaFleur, who is a close friend of, the brother of his close friend, Matt LaFleur. And then he hires another guy, Jeff Ulbrich, to run his defense, where they had crossed paths before. And a lot of the coaching staff has like that background between Saleh and like previous stops. Even Nathaniel Hackett, they worked together previously. Now he's going to be the offensive coordinator. Whereas Brian Dable came into the Giants and he's like, I don't care who you are. I could meet you like 5 minutes ago. If you're the best coach for the job, we're going to hire you. Like, he had no connection with Wink Martindale. He had no connection with Mike Kafka. They just come in, and you saw the difference in the way the Giants were run this year. Obviously, the way that they were able to make the playoffs. I think that's a huge difference for the Jets. I'm not entirely sure this coaching staff is it yet. And then the same could be said for Zach Wilson. Like, with a different – now, I always go back to this. If he was drafted by the 49ers, like everybody kind of suggested, would we see a Brock Purdy type run from Zach Wilson? Would he be even better? Would we be talking about him as one of the best quarterbacks in that class, as opposed to being on the unemployment line in a couple of weeks? Like, at this point in time, he'll probably be sitting next to Aaron Rodgers unknowingly in that dark room somewhere, wherever he's going. But that's the big takeaway from the Jets. Obviously, the defense is fine. They had some leaky safety play. It was really not good all season long. Much of the defense was kind of bailed out by the play of Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. They got some great play by Quinn Williams up front in the front seven. Everybody talks about CJ Mosley being, an all pro. He had a great year and everything. I'm not going to take it away from him. All the football guys love him. All the stat guys kind of love him for the most part. I still say at the end of the day, if you get more speed in that linebacker room, your defense probably gets a lot better. Like if you see him, you watch the all 22, or you see him on a game day and you watch him matched up with those fast running backs or a faster tight end, you could see the glaring difference in that speed at the second level, especially. But much of that defense was, led by those three stars in Gardner, Reed, and Quinn Williams. You saw you lost Quinn Williams for a game, how different it was. If he goes out at one point in time, you see how different it was, especially when they rotate guys. On offense, you look at Garrett Wilson, who was benched basically in the first game of the season. And then it took like a whole week of everybody screaming, "Where is Garrett Wilson? We spent the 10th overall pick on him, and he's not even in the game." And then he goes out and he has a great season. Brees Hall going down basically was the thing that killed this team, among plenty other injuries. The arrow's pointing up, but as I'm sure you're about to ask me about this quarterback situation moving forward, um, it's pointing up, but it's not entirely a straight arrow going up. It's kind of sideways right now. Like we might be downturning pretty soon here. Crash and burn potentially. I don't know.
Okay. So two-part then on this QB situation. What would you want? What would you do? And what do you think ultimately happens?
Well, the pipe dream has always been Lamar Jackson, but I know that's not happening. Um, if it did happen, I first off I'd be shocked for a couple of reasons. One, because that would mean the Ravens traded him within the AFC. Two, just because of the fact that the Jets actually lucked out and got somebody really good at the game's most important position, sports most important position for a change. Um, but like I don't see that happening. So you have three realistic options, and you're looking at Jimmy Garoppolo, Derek Carr, and obviously Aaron Rodgers. And I've had this conversation with a couple people recently, and see, my takeaway is I don't know how you come out of the conversation with anything other than Aaron Rodgers being the number one choice. Derek Carr is, the clear number two. Like if you come out of the offseason with him, you're happy. You're probably not going to win anything of meaning anyway. I mean, maybe like that defense really has to do a lot of heavy lifting if that's the case. Jimmy Garoppolo, distant third option. I come away very uninspired. So basically, the takeaway is if you watch the AFC Championship game and you watch Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes duel it out for 3.5, 4 hours, and it ends the way that it does, to me, I don't see how you could come out of watching that game with any other answer than Aaron Rodgers being the starting quarterback. Like, that's the guy you need because that's the guy that can elevate this team. As far as the other options go, you're basically hoping that the cast of characters is good enough to elevate the quarterback, not the other way around. And whether or not there's been a lot talked about whether or not Derek Carr is even suitable to the New York area. I honestly don't know. I mean, he was crying in front of the Vegas media. I mean, I'm all for, showing your emotions, stuff like that. But the New York media uh, will probably it could completely derail a season. I mean, we're going to get to the Nets here eventually. They just completely destroyed the entire Nets season. Like, I have thoughts on Kyrie Irving, but I mean, he was saying, "Oh, the New York media was out to get me, and that's why I was the way I was." There's no way that's true. Number one, I mean, they were out to get him, but it's not the reason why he was the way he was. Basically, the point is, I don't know if Derek Carr is suited for this area. Jimmy Garoppolo is always hurt. And if you mean to tell me that Zach Wilson is not good enough to quarterback this team, which he is not, that's pretty clear by now. Maybe he could be in the future. But if Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt every year, that means you're signing up for probably at least 4 games of Zach Wilson. That's conservative estimate here, 4 games. I just don't see it. I'm very concerned at the way this whole thing is going. Aaron Rodgers going into a dark room for 4 days. Don't know how you could do it, number one. Just getting a little meal slot and just all of a sudden eating in the dark. Nothing to do for just 4 straight days. A little concerned about his well-being. Maybe he's taken too many hits to the head or something. I'm not sure how it's entirely. What did he say it was? It was uh, helped clear your mind or something, provide clarity. I think it would make somebody go insane. But either way, I'm a huge fan of bringing him in. Everybody seems to talk about, oh, Aaron Rodgers took a step back last year. The guy had a broken thumb. He had 1,000,001 injuries, and everybody just conveniently forgets the fact that he's coming off 2 MVP seasons in a row. At that point in time, like, this is still Aaron Rodgers. This is still a guy, and even if he does come here, one of the best defenses that he's ever played with. Then you're looking at a good young cast of characters. All he has to do is just be Aaron Rodgers. He doesn't have to be Superman. He doesn't have to be anything great. You just need him when you're down in a game, or you need him for those few throws a game where he can really turn it on its head and flip the script. That's the guy that I want. If you want a prediction as to who it ends up with, see, this is where I'm going with this. The arrow is pointing up for a little while. At the end of the day, I think it's more sideways or pointed down because of the fact that I don't think he's going to come here. I also don't think he's going to the Raiders. All these people talking about, oh, Aaron Rodgers going to the Raiders. Are you kidding me? Like, the Raiders couldn't even fire Josh McDaniels because they didn't have enough money, and now all of a sudden they're going to pay Aaron Rodgers $60 million. Like, yeah, sure. Mark Davis is just going to, climb a tree somewhere. Eventually he's going to find it. If he gets one tall enough in the desert, I hope he does. But at the end of the day, Jacoby Brissett, that is my week 1 prediction, if you want to dive into that.
Oh, man. That is a brutal prediction. If it's Jacoby Brissett, I am sorry for you.
I'm sorry for myself too, honestly.
No, I was going to, before you made that awful prediction, because that would be an awful outcome. Aaron Rodgers would just change the vibe of the building. You know what I mean? Like, it just changes everything. Similarly, like Tom Brady goes to Tampa, it just changes the building. For good or bad, Russell Wilson changed the Denver Broncos building, right?
Yeah,
the building's going to change.
Did.
Right. Like, the building's going to change. It's going to be centered around Aaron Rodgers, whether that's good or bad. But I would lean towards probably good because you have the talent of Aaron Rodgers built around that defense, built around the young weaponry that they have. And like, hey, I'll have Aaron Rodgers and we can kind of figure out the rest. But yeah, if it's your Kobe Brissett, you guys are royally screwed.
All right, I'll turn it around here for a second.
Okay, turn it around.
All right, so Aaron Rodgers, clear cut number 1. Derek Carr, clear cut number 2. Jimmy Garoppolo, kind of a distant third. You're not inspired by it. Let's say Derek Carr meeting with the Saints. He winds up there. Carolina drafts a quarterback.
Okay.
Indianapolis drafts a quarterback because they're tired of going down the 40-something-year-old quarterback route. Hasn't worked yet. Probably still
probably not going to work, right?
Mark Davis somehow scrounges up enough monopoly money to afford Aaron Rodgers, and I don't know. Jimmy Garoppolo winds up in Siberia. I don't know, wherever he winds up. You're looking at Jimmy Garoppolo, Ryan Tannehill. Oh, here you go, Tennessee. I forgot about Tennessee. Let's throw them in the ring. Maybe Aaron Rodgers winds up in Tennessee. That would be, not the most shocking thing I've ever heard. Although it would have been nice if they had A.J. Brown. I'm sure they would have liked that. So Aaron Rodgers or Jimmy Garoppolo, one of them wind up in Tennessee, hypothetically here. You're looking at a group of probably like Ryan Tannehill, Jacoby Brissett. Seems pretty realistic once you start breaking down how many teams need a quarterback versus how many are available. Like, I don't think I'm too far off in terms of, like, this is, like, everybody talks about one of those 3 being a Jet next year. I almost feel like we're kind of overestimating the percentage of one of those guys winding up there and kind of underestimating how likely it is that it goes really, really bad. And then you wind up with one of those other, like, I don't know, lower tier guys that you just have to get a starter for a year and then hope for a guy in the draft. I mean, obviously everybody, if you don't make the playoffs this year, everybody's getting fired anyway. But I feel like we're kind of discounting the fact that, hey, you might actually wind up with Jacoby Brissett or somebody like that. Or you're going to have to start trading some serious draft capital to move up and select somebody and hitch your wagon to that guy. Because if you're faced with Jacoby Brissett or like CJ Stroud, hypothetically, if you're the Jets staff, like, which one do you hitch your wagon to? So, like, what do you think? Do you think that's like a realistic possibility at this point? I feel like it is.
I mean, listen, I don't think they're getting Derek Carr. That feels like a Carolina or New Orleans. That's what I feel like with him. Then we go Jimmy Garoppolo. That was more LaFleur. So
Yeah.
there's no connection there now with Hackett, right? And Sal, like I'm sure Sal was there, but there's no real connection. So I don't see that. Like honestly, I could see Jimmy Garoppolo like in Tampa Bay. Like I feel like those two honestly wind up in the NFC South because that division's wide open. And all those teams probably feel like they can win it if they get the right combination of quarterback play and the rest of the roster. So I don't think they do get those two. So I kind of do think it is Aaron Rodgers or it's what do we do? Because even if Lamar Jackson does get traded, which I actually think there's a good possibility. I think it's like 50-50. Again, it
That's
could be
fair.
like Atlanta. Atlanta might go all in on a guy like Lamar. I don't Not that the Jets wouldn't go all in on a guy like Lamar. I just don't think he would wind up there. Again, they would probably get rid of him, try to get him to the NFC. And then then it becomes Aaron Rodgers. I
I
kind of
think the
think that
big
he's
thing
gonna.
about the
Yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I think he's gonna wind up there. I think he's gonna wind up in New York
Well, I really hope
because
so.
you're right with the Vegas point. I agree with. They don't have the cash. That's just a real liquidal issue. Is that they don't have 60 million just to. That's why they got rid of Khalil Mack. Like they still don't have that financial resource. They're paying John Gruden, like whatever. Like they don't have the cash. So I don't. And just because Devontae Adams is there, like I don't really see that. So I really think it's Green Bay or it's the Jets. So you're 50-50 there, and yeah, you lose out on him. Then it's what do we do? And then now in your hypothetical, Brissett or Stroud or man, it's risky, but I'll go Stroud. Like you have to try to because let's say hypothetically, Jacoby Brissett's getting you fired. Like
Yeah,
that's going to
exactly.
happen. You're going to get fired. If CJ Stroud, even if you miss the playoffs with CJ Stroud, well, he looks good. Like you just miss it. There's a chance, you guys. The trajectory is up. He's on a rookie deal. Like we can make this work. You know what I mean? There's way more plausible hope there rather than Brissett. Like we know we're screwed going into the season.
Yeah, because when you evaluate anything with the Jets, you have to take two things into account. The one being the one I've already mentioned, the fact that if you miss the playoffs, more than likely everybody gets fired. That's front office, that's coaching staff, that's everybody involved. And you could argue like, hey, they brought in a ton of talent. Like Joe Douglas has done a very admirable job of getting a lot of talent into the room, something that they didn't have. If the Sacramento Kings make the playoffs in the NBA, the Jets would have the longest playoff drought in professional sports, which is almost unthinkable in the NFL when you could rebuild an entire team in like 2 years. Some of them could even do it in 1 year if you have a good enough draft and everything. So you have to look at the fact that everybody's probably going to get fired, fair or not. That's what Woody Johnson is going to do. It's also important to remember that Woody Johnson did not hire anybody that was on this staff or front office. He was over in the UK as an ambassador. So it was his brother who is made fun of an awful lot in the Jets, circle essentially for his interesting, very weird personality, the way that he speaks and everything, but might put you to sleep. You never know. Either way, it's important to remember that Woody Johnson didn't hire any of those guys. He's already ticked off at the fact that they collapsed at the end of the season, that they couldn't find their way into the playoffs after starting 7-4. I mean, after the Buffalo game, you're going into the bye. People were talking in the area about like, hey, there's a chance they might win the division when Buffalo was stumbling, and Josh Allen had the elbow injury, and there was all that talk in the air. Now all of a sudden you're talking week 18, like, hey, if everything breaks right, you're getting a top 10 pick in the draft. Like that went south really fast. So you talk about everybody potentially getting fired, and then the other thing, what I brought up earlier when we were talking about coaching stuff, everything with Robert Saleh seems to come down to some previous connection. Like everything that they do, you could kind of draw, a link to somewhere in the past. Aaron Rodgers has that link because of the LaFleur connection. Another guy that has that link would be Ryan Tannehill because of the fact that LaFleur used to be in Tennessee. So there is those like that familiarity there seems to be a big deal with this organization right now. I personally hate it. I think that, as I said with the Giants, you just go out there and you hire the right guy, you bring in the right players. but everything with them seems to be like, hey, we know who this person is, we know what we're getting in them, and it's fine to a degree. But unless you start winning, then that's just going to get everybody fired in the end anyway. So that's kind of where I lean in that regard. So I think you're kind of looking at that other tier, but I wouldn't rule out a draft day trade up or a trade up right before the draft to try and secure a quarterback if they miss out on the top three, because they're going to have to do something to try and stick around past 2023. So I don't know. I feel like that odds are with the Jets, it always goes south. But if there's, everybody's talking about the NFL script writing stuff, Arian Foster really doing a good job with that lately. You want to talk about script writers? I mean, the Jets are one of the few teams in this upcoming offseason that can be forced to do Hard Knocks on HBO. So if the script writers are really getting into it right now, then they're going to get Aaron Rodgers on the Jets, because then we get to watch them on Hard Knocks in August.
That's the content we all want.
It was good the last time around. We need part two. We went from, Rex Ryan looking to get snacks to Robert Saleh just running around the building screaming all gas, no break for 4 hours.
Perfect on the Jets. Now, the cake of it all. And you know what? You were coming on. This didn't go down yet. Like, we would have probably talked about the Nets. Like, hey, just, Kevin Durant being out and, Kyrie playing really well. Things looking, hey, can they make a run here?
Title contenders to
NBA
laughingstock in 3 minutes.
That was a false narrative, right? I'm just giving you the 4. Kyrie, now a Mav, Nets, this big 3, where we're at with this entire organization.
Well, when you said big 3, I really hope you were talking about Nick Claxton, not Ben Simmons, because
definitely not. No, I was referring to James Harden when he was there for
okay.
Pit stop.
Yeah, well, otherwise you could have picked Cam Thomas or Nick Claxton, one of those two, but Ben Simmons is like the furthest thing from a member of a big 3 that I've ever seen. Unless you're talking about the big 3 worst contracts in the NBA, maybe we have that going for us. But wow. You figure summer 2019, June 30th, that's when they were like, oh, free agency is going to start at, later in the evening Eastern time, as opposed to like midnight on July 1st. And everybody's like, oh, this is cool. And the news breaks that, oh, okay, Kyrie Irving is going to sign with the Nets. And then you're just waiting for the shoe to drop. And it was like, follow the boardroom on Instagram, because that's where Kevin Durant's going to make his announcement. And then they're like, oh, the announcement is coming at this point in time. And then all of a sudden everybody followed the boardroom, and then they put out the Instagram story saying Kevin Durant's going to sign with the Brooklyn Nets. And it's like, okay, hey, they built something here. Like, everybody always wants to talk about, oh, the team that they had in 2019 led by D'Angelo Russell and Jared Allen and Karis LeVert, Spencer Dinwiddie, all those guys. Like Jared Dudley was like the captain of your team who fought Ben Simmons in the playoffs that year before he became like, 15th man on the roster if he was lucky. Like, it's been a far fall from grace for this franchise in that regard. I mean, they did all that building. This is the same team that Mikhail Prokhorov, when he once owned the team, was like, hey, I'm going to get a championship in 5 years or bust. And then he goes out and they make the big trade for Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce. And, at the end of the day, you made a big trade for them. You gave up all those draft picks. You made a big trade for James Harden. You gave up a ton of draft picks. You made a big 3. And, both cases kind of, even they argued when Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett got here that it was like more of a big 4 at the time, or even a big 5. That was Darren Williams, Joe Johnson, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and then Brook Lopez. I mean, you were looking at a pretty nice starting lineup there. And it's funny because you do all that stuff, and at the end of the day, what did it net you? You got, no pun intended, of course, but you got one playoff series win for all that trouble. In both situations, you just got one playoff series win. In the case of the former big 3 that was broken up last year, ironically, it was 1 year to the date that James Harden basically was forcing himself out of Brooklyn, February 4th. And that's when the trade thing broke for Kyrie this year. It was when James Harden sat out last year and everything came crumbling down. You got 16 games of that big 3 with Kyrie, KD, and Harden. You had 74 games of Kyrie and KD together for a team that brought them in 2019, and you went through what is now like 4 seasons of this. To get 74 games out of the 2 guys that signed here that summer is really, really sad at the end of the day. And realistically, you knew that KD was going to miss that first year. Kyrie got hurt in 2019, and that was kind of a throwaway season because obviously that's when everything happened with COVID and they shut the league down. But Kyrie played in, I think it was some 20 something games that year. And it was like, oh, KD's not here. It's not that big of a deal. We're just going to shut it down basically. And we'll be back next year. Then they bring in everybody, and nobody's even able to go to Barclays Center to watch the games when they were playing with the big three, and everything was going crazy. And then last year, people start getting to go, and they get to watch it, and that came crumbling down when Durant got hurt, and Harden didn't like Kyrie. And there's just the thing about the NBA is there's just so many personalities, and there are so many things that could possibly go wrong in these situations when the stars run the entire league. And if you're running a crash course on what could happen when you sign a star, everything negative, like the entire half of the book about, well, if you're writing a book, 75 to 85% of the book is overwhelmingly positive. Like you're talking about championship parades and, oh, how many finals are you going to win? Like we saw that with Miami when they formed the initial big three of LeBron, D Wade, and Chris Bosh. That was like the highs of highs. And then the absolute lows of lows, like the remaining 15 to 10 to 15% of the time, whatever you want to call it, that was about as negative as it possibly gets. Like you have a former player that's brought in as a head coach that was doing soccer commentary for the UEFA Champions League. He comes in as the head coach as like this TikTok dancing star. It just, I don't understand. I didn't understand it from the beginning. They bring in Steve Nash. That whole thing comes crashing down. Seems like Jacques Vaughn finally got something going with this team. And you were talking about a potential finals contender when Durant got back with the way that this team was playing. And now all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like literally out of nowhere, it's like, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. Honestly, the Nets fans put up with so much in this mini era of the franchise. And it's just a shame that it all came crashing down the way that it did, whether it's front office incompetency or ownership, which I think, frankly, is awful. Weird coaching like dynamics and stuff like that, just weird roster turnover. There's so many things that they put up with in this short amount of time, and frankly they deserve better because they did show up, and the team didn't show up for them.
No, it seemed like it was all aligned. You bring big three together in the NBA, you win a championship, right? Like that seemed like the model. It seemed like, especially when it's not even any big three, you have arguably the best player in the world in Kevin Durant and has championship experience. Kyrie Irving has championship experience, and then you bring in James Harden. You just think it's going to come all together. They lose the heartbreaker to Milwaukee because they're blitzing Milwaukee in those first two games. Then Kyrie gets hurt, right? And then, James Harden's having an injury, kind of battling all, plays through it, but obviously he's not himself. And it's like, all right, like, we'll get healthy, whatever. We'll be back. And that was their highest end.
They were a few minutes away from going up 3-0 in that series against Milwaukee, and then they fell apart at the end.
And who knows? Honestly, they probably go on to win that entire thing. That's kind of the way they were playing. They were playing that well and that dominant.
They beat the Bucks by like 50 points.
Yeah,
or
no, they
like
killed them.
Game one.
They were killing them. Yeah, no, they were at a different level, and now it's kind of all falling apart slowly. James Harden exits last year. Steve Nash gets fired at the beginning of this year. Kyrie, the extension, forget everything else that happened before this year, coming into the year with everything. And then, he's ultimately gone because they want to put some language in his contract, which
everybody else has though.
Right. And there's language in all these contracts, but you're not necessarily a guy that's done everything the right way, the best way to really honestly complain that, oh, I have language in my contract. Well, it's no surprise that you do because the way in which you operate.
Don't ask him that. He was a great teammate. That's what he said. That's right. Actually the thing that ticks me off the most. Like you listen to the quotes or you read the quotes from the press conference that Dallas had yesterday. And that was my gosh, like get him in the Oscars or something. Like seriously, deserves an award for that performance. Like he actually sat there and once again, the Nets fans supported him through everything, as crazy as it was, as ridiculous as it was at certain points in time. they supported him like nobody else had ever done before because of the fact that he was the Jersey kid that was going to play for his favorite team growing up. And he had all the pictures of when he was wearing Nets gear when he was a kid, and he looked up to Jason Kidd and all that stuff. Well, now he gets to play for Jason Kidd like every other Nets point guard that flames out. Somehow they always wind up in Dallas. Um, Jason Kidd has a migraine, and all of a sudden, before you know it, 3 minutes later, he's traded to Dallas. And Devin Harris gets traded in that deal to the Nets, and then somehow winds up back in Dallas. And Darren Williams winds up in Dallas, and now Kyrie Irving winds up in Dallas. So basically, Spencer Dinwiddie obviously has the Dallas connection just the other way around. He'll probably wind up back there before you know it, too. So at the end of the day, whatever point guard comes to the Nets, they might as well start looking for real estate in Dallas, Fort Worth area. They'll probably wind up there eventually. But the fact that he was able to sit there at the podium and say that he was, he stood up for his teammates and he was a great teammate and he was always there for them and he did his job, and the fact that he left them in fourth place, so he made good on his promise and whatnot. He signed for over $100 million and played 74 games with the guy that he wanted to come here with. Like, he didn't even get a full season out of the two of them together in that duo. And after all the nonsense that he went through, whether it was him going completely AWOL and just disappearing for a while, or the various things that he had to sit out for, at the end of the day, you just look at it and it's like, dude, you got to look in the mirror at some point in time. Like, you left Cleveland on bad terms, but at the end of the day, it was just Cleveland. So, no media attention like that. Not in the same regard that he got in his other two stops. Boston, he says, hey, I'm here for the long run. And then he bolts in that offseason. With the Nets, the funny thing to me is that he complains about the front office. He complains about the coaching staff. He complains about ownership. He complains about all these things. Everybody's kind of discounting the fact that before last season even started, all three stars on the Nets, the big three at the time, they were all together, and there was no craziness at that point in time. Kevin Durant signed the extension. James Harden and Kyrie Irving both had the extensions right in front of them. Neither one of them signed it. James Harden somehow grows unhappy, and he's like, I want my money. Well, you had it right in front of you before the season started, and you didn't want it. Kyrie Irving, he's complaining about not getting the extension right now. Oh, I want the full 4-year max. You had it. He is the reason why he does not have that full 4-year max, because it doesn't come down to the Nets front office. It doesn't come down to ownership. It doesn't come down to anybody but him. If he just showed up and did his job, then he has the full 4-year max. It's not even a debate at this point in time. The reason why they didn't give him the full 4-year max is because they frankly just can't trust him. What's going to happen in the world, or what's going to happen in his personal life? And I'm not saying that, you don't take time away. I mean, fine, you need to do that. You do that. Things happen. That's just the way the world works. But for you to sit there and sign a 4-year deal and only get 16 games with the big three and 74 with your co-star that you came in with, and never playing a full season or even relatively close to a full season in Brooklyn, how could you fault the organization for not giving you a full 4-year max at that point in time? I mean, it just seems absolutely. I mean, maybe it's just the way the NBA is now with the star culture and stuff, and it's great to a degree and terrible to another degree. But if you're going to complain that you didn't get this contract, just look in the mirror. You're the reason why you didn't get it.
No, you're 100% on point with that. It's all on him. That's his. He is where he is because of him, and nobody else to blame for it.
I hope it works out for him. I really do. I really do hope it works out for him. I hope everything, comes together in Dallas. I'm not a bitter person in the sense that Kyrie screwed my team over. So, I hope he flames out in Dallas. No, I like watching Luka Doncic. I hope it works out for him. You get yourself together, you get your money, you get all that stuff, but you can't go complaining to the media about this, that, and the other thing and say, oh, the New York media was out to get me, when you single-handedly put a target on your back at every turn you possibly could have, and you knew what you were getting into when you signed up for it. If that was not a desirable thing, then you should have went somewhere else. And the thing that's even crazier to me is the fact that, they wanted to come to New York, and it was like, oh, we're not going to the Knicks because the media would be out to get us with the Knicks. It's still the same media. You don't get the same attention. You don't have the same kind of fan base in the sense that, they're not everywhere. They're not packing the Garden every single night of the week when you're playing. I mean, yeah, the Nets are obviously the little brother in New York, but you're still getting the attention and you're getting it because of who you are. It's going to follow you no matter where you go. And just because of the fact that you chose the quote unquote lesser team in New York doesn't mean that they weren't going to pay attention to you. So that's the main takeaway. So hopefully it works out for him. Kevin Durant's probably getting traded within the next 25 hours or so. And this entire thing is going to burn to the ground. And then I can't wait to see what stars the Nets recruit in another 5 to 10 years when they return from irrelevancy again.
Yeah, so that's where I was going. So pretty much you landed in. Yep, it's just gonna burn down, disaster. Kevin Durant's gonna be out of here. With Jim, with I think it might be too quick for tomorrow, in my opinion, for Durant to be gone.
Yeah, I
You'd
think
probably
so.
be like, you never know.
Hey,
But
these
it
things
does
come
feel
together
like
fast.
right. It does feel though this will probably be it. Right. Like I'd be surprised if he's back in the Nets uniform next year. What's your take, real quick, on that?
Yeah, I'd be shocked, honestly. There's like so it's just very in my eyes, it's just such a low probability that he's back, mainly because of the fact that in order to keep him here, you have to find another star. And the odds of you attaining that other star when every team out there knows that you need to do this, to me just feels slim to none. Like right now, it was Brian Windhorst that reported that teams don't want to help the Nets out. Quite frankly, if I was one of those teams, why would I help you out? I might get Kevin Durant in the offseason. Why would I help you keep this guy? I mean, my entire franchise could turn around just by waiting until the off season to see what happens. So if I'm a team like Phoenix, or he's not going to Toronto. I don't understand why everybody keeps saying that, but if I'm a team like them, why would I want to try and help out a team like the Nets when I might be able to get your franchise in the offseason? I mean, it'll cost a lot to get them. That's the reason why I don't think the trade's going to go down now. Um, but unless they figure out a way to get somebody to be a co-star here, and we already know that's not Ben Simmons, and we already know that Durant does not like Ben Simmons, probably because of the fact that he just refuses to shoot the ball, or every time he tries to contest a shot or does something that's a little off, then he starts limping around. So it was kind of, I don't know. Saw a clip of it yesterday in the Phoenix game. He contested a shot in the corner and he came down fine and he was moving. And it was like the guy missed a shot or whatever. And it was a terrible contest on defense. And he started limping around. So I don't know what's going on with him. Quite frankly, I don't think this is the right situation for Ben Simmons either. Like, that's probably San Antonio, where if I was San Antonio, I'd probably call. I mean, they're rebuilding anyway. They have Brett Brown on the staff, who was really good for Simmons in his career. I probably would check into that if I were them. It'll cost you next to nothing because the Nets would probably just want to offload the contract. Joe Tsai needs to do everything in his power to save every dollar off that tax bill that he wants, because he apparently, I guess he must be in the Mark Davis company where he has no money all of a sudden now. But point is, I think Durant's gone. The guy I feel sorry for the most is probably Jack Vaughn, because like the guy, for all basically what he did was he made the Nets into title contenders, and then all of a sudden he gets the rug pulled out from underneath him. So I think he's. I wasn't sure if he was the right guy, honestly, when they said, yeah, we'll make you the head coach. I wouldn't have hired Steve Nash in the first place. That's how we wound up in this situation. But the fact that he kind of smoothed everything over, and it seemed like for the first time in those 4 years since everybody got here that it was actually going to be about basketball for a change. Like, for the first time, it was actually going to be about basketball. And all of a sudden, now this happens. I just feel bad for him and everything that he's done. I thought he had a chance to win Coach of the Year with the way that they were rolling there for a while. And now all of a sudden, you're like, now you're free falling in the standings. You don't know if Durant's staying. He hasn't said anything publicly about it. And he's not going to the games like that. To me, it's just such a disaster. And, every disaster like this with stars in the NBA pretty much ends one way, and it's, with the star leaving. So we'll see what happens, but I'm not overly optimistic about anything that they get back in return because of the fact that these teams know that they have to trade him now. Unless he comes out and shocks the world and says, I'm here for the long run.
That would be shocking, I think, at this point. Now the real stuff, the good stuff. Nothing related to your teams.
Trying to get my mood up here, huh?
Unfortunately, in some ways, right? You'd rather it be about your teams in this conversation. Super Bowl preview. So we got Chiefs, Eagles. I'll give you kind of my lay down, the way I'm viewing it, and then you can give your take, and then we'll keep this thing rolling. Um, I just view it like this: Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, they're really their best at what they do right now. The pieces across the board for Kansas City have improved. I feel like the defense is way better. The secondary's got a lot of young pieces in there. Chris Jones has been dominant. You have Nick Bolton in the middle of that defense. I just feel like they're improved on that side of the ball. And honestly, the biggest difference for them has been the offensive line. They invested in it. Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, like they just invested in that. And I think that's really the game changer for Kansas City. If they didn't have that, especially with this matchup in Philadelphia, it would have looked a lot like Tampa Bay and that Super Bowl where they just got demolished. He was running all over the place. I just don't think that will be the same result this time around. I think Philly's really good, really talented roster, probably the best roster in the league. Run heavy, run oriented. Jalen Hurts has improved a ton. Maybe he's a little banged up. Can he really air it out and keep up with Mahomes? I think that's a question mark. Well, he's got the weaponry and AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. I think Miles Sanders played really well. I think it's a really close matchup, but for me, I'm gonna lean on the reliability of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. I just think there's enough there, and I think the biggest difference is that offensive line. I think they're gonna show up, give them enough time, and they're gonna manage a way to get this win.
I largely agree in this sense. Like,
Great, we agree.
yeah, that's awful. It's a terrible idea, actually. See, if it wasn't for the fact that I think like 80% of the public also thinks that the Eagles are going to win this game, I'd say that we're probably in danger. But everybody seems to be picking the Eagles to win. My whole thing is that, like, are we going to see the Eagles play like a really good game eventually? And I'm not sure if that's a hot take or not, but realistically, in the playoffs, they faced Daniel Jones and the Giants, who felt like a fraudulent team all season long. Like they were punching above their weight pretty clearly most of the season. They didn't have any receivers. The roster, for the most part, was terrible. And that's why I alluded to how good the coaching was, because of the fact that that roster on paper shouldn't have been anywhere near the playoffs. The same way that, they play San Francisco and Brock Purdy gets injured early in that game. And it was like Kyle Shanahan's luck. Like, so basically for him, either he makes the Super Bowl and he chokes in the second half of the game, or he just loses every single quarter. Like, it was the perfect Shanahan narrative, like perfect storyline. He loses every single quarterback he has, or he gets to the Super Bowl. They probably find a way with, I don't know, maybe the punter playing quarterback at that point in time to have like a 21-0 lead, and they still find a way to lose when it's all said and done. But the point is, even going back to the regular season, like, I was looking at this before. The last time that I feel like you could say the Eagles like really kind of dominated anybody was probably the Giants matchup on December 11th. So now we're looking at like almost 2 full months of, no Eagles domination after the way the season started. Like, in a way, did they peak too early? I mean, I guess it's kind of tough to say that because they still found a way to get to the Super Bowl, but I feel like you really can't deny how easy the path was to get here. Like, you beat a team that shouldn't have been in the playoffs, and you beat a team without a quarterback. So, and Jalen Hurts didn't even play all that great in the NFC Championship game either. I feel like that's something that people need to kind of focus on a little bit more.
Well, I would say this for Philadelphia coming into the year, I predicted that they would be the 1 seed in the NFC. Not necessarily because I actually think they're better than I thought they were going to be. Roster really, honestly, it really came down to Jalen Hurts. Like, they had the roster, good team. Like, could Jalen Hurts make that jump? And he did. But their schedule was so easy. Like, I thought unequivocally, like, they're going to go 13-4, be the 1 seed in the NFC based on their schedule alone. And that's kind of how it unfolds. Were they better than I thought they were? Probably a little bit more high end. Yeah. But I'm telling you, you're right. Their path has been, not taking away their credit, because they're a deserving team to be here. You know what I mean? But their path to get here has been, I would say, definitely on the easier side of things. And yeah, I think it is interesting because can they really play in a really tightly contested game? And when you're going against the best in the world that does it, I do think they're going to come up short because there's no way they Philadelphia. I don't see a blowout in this game either way. But so if it's tight, I'm gonna lean towards the experience in Kansas City, just
I
because
agree with
I don't
that.
yeah.
To me, actually, it's just like kind of like you said. I don't want to take anything away from the Eagles because they have been the best team all season. It's just that when it comes down to it, yeah, everybody makes a whole lot about experience. To me, I feel like in a way that's kind of overrated in a sense. Like once the game starts, is everybody really thinking like, "Hey, this is the Super Bowl," or are they just thinking like, "Hey, I got to go make this play"? And as long as I feel like for the Eagles, that side of things, like the acquisition of AJ Brown last year, obviously was like a huge difference for that offense. The fact that their running game is so prolific, and the defense really did hold down the fort a lot. And we still can't discount the offensive line of guys that are either battling through injuries or just like really, really good for a very long stretch. Guys like Jason Kelsey. Thank God you did not bring up the Kelsey brothers storyline. I really hope that's not in the agenda. I can't take any more of that. There are
I
two
think we
things that
get it. I think we get it. They're brothers. I
yeah,
think we're
no,
good.
there's like two
Future Hall of
things. Like,
Famers. Yeah.
yeah, it's whether it's the brothers who are getting chocolate chip cookies from their mother, or the fact that Andy Reid once coached the Eagles. Like, I think those storylines have played out. I think we could kind of move past them. I understand everybody is talking like got to get the casual fan involved, but I think we've beat that narrative into the ground. Like that's the problem with having 2 weeks between the championship games and the Super Bowl is like we absolutely kill these narratives into the ground before the game even starts, and then it's like, what do we talk about? Like we talked about this for 2 weeks, and we just destroyed it by then. But from the Chiefs' perspective, like I feel like you just can't underrate the fact that Mahomes obviously had the ankle injury and he was fine in the AFC Championship game. Like it didn't seem to really derail him all that much in the grand scheme of things. And then you gave him 2 weeks to rest it. And Andy Reid was saying that, he's not 100%, but he could do everything in the playbook and they were moving around pretty well in practice. Obviously, practice is not like the game in that sense, but I just feel like those 2 weeks, we should kind of remember that. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if like Patrick Mahomes had, say, like a rushing touchdown or some big run at some point in time in the game, and everybody's like, "Hey, what about that ankle injury?" Without remembering the fact that he's now like 3 weeks removed from it with all that treatment that he gets every single day. And to me, when it comes down to it, like you said, I think it's a close game, but at that point in time, I'm going to take the quarterback that's been there and done that before. And like you have the best one in the world, and even though like he lost Tyreek Hill last year, hasn't made much of a difference. They've been able to effectively run the ball and get those running backs out in space, and obviously Travis Kelsey is holding it down over the middle. Um, I don't think Kansas City necessarily needs like that top receiver like Tyreek Hill. I think they could get the job done without him. And honestly, the way that Chris Jones lined up, they made mention of it a lot in the championship game, how he's kind of lining up on the outside of the line as opposed to in the middle. I feel like, you know, line him up at defensive end. I feel like he kind of wrecks the game a little bit. And you talk about shutting down that Eagles running game. You stuff the box a little bit. You make Jalen Hurts beat you with his arm. And he wasn't really able to do that in the NFC Championship game. Obviously, the biggest play was probably that Devontae Smith one early in the game that actually wasn't a catch. So when it comes down to it, I actually think both defenses are probably. I'm not probably going to think that this game is going over. I think they'll probably get off to a slow start and it'll pick up later on. But ultimately, probably the quarterback that has the ball last is the one that probably going to walk away with a win. And I honestly think that'll be Mahomes when it's all said and done.
Let's save the score, Super Bowl MVP for the very end here. Let's go into the fun stuff, the prop stuff. I know this is your level of expertise, so you kind of take it away, and I'll give a comment here and there.
All right, so we have a couple of them. So obviously, national anthem stuff. Chris Stapleton, country singer, is going to be doing the national anthem. The guy with long hair, long beard, nice cowboy hat. So people were actually talking about what color cowboy hat he's going to wear, whether it's going to be like brown or black or no hat at all. And I was actually thinking about this. Now, some of these ones you'd have to make those bets at offshore books, which I am personally not going to do, but people like talking about it anyway. I just think it's fun. National anthem. So I was thinking about this, right? In regard to the whole hat thing, like what color hat is he going to wear? Like, I don't know. You would country singer, patriotic guy. He's probably going to want to take the hat off. So like, does he hang it at the end of his guitar? Because more often than not, he has a guitar with him. So like, the answer might be no hat at all. In all reality, in that regard. But most of the time, he wears like that light brown one. I think it'd be kind of cool if he did dangle it off the end of the guitar, or maybe do some sort of like ceremonious, like put the hat back on at the end of the anthem. But as far as the time goes, so they have the over under on the anthem time set at 1:59 seconds, and to me that just seems like a clear over. Like some of the other ones, last year's anthem, the over under was 1:35 seconds. Eric Church was there in Super Bowl 55. That was 1:59. That one went over. Also a country guy. Uh, well, not really, but I was thinking Luke Bryan. My bad. Luke Bryan, Super Bowl 51, country guy. 209 was the over under. He went 204. So, male country singer, stuff like that. And Chris Stapleton, if you look at his songs, like go on iTunes, go on Spotify, go on Apple Music, wherever you get your music at. Just look at the length of his songs. Most of them are like 4 minutes. If you listen to a song, there is no way on earth you could possibly tell me this guy from Kentucky is not going over the 1:59. That just seems like such a surefire, no-brainer type way to get your day started. Just take the over 1:59. You'll probably be profiting early in this one. But yeah, I have you ever listened to Chris Stapleton music before or seen him talk in that regard? Guy
you
doesn't
you
really move all
know,
that fast.
I don't know. Like, there's a chance I've heard the song. Do I
Mm-hmm.
know? Like, that's a Chris Stapleton song? No, but I will take a look after this, to get my get a better understanding on the subject.
See, I tried to look up and see if he's ever sang an anthem before, but I couldn't find anything online about it. But like I said here, one of his hit songs, "Tennessee Whiskey," 4 minutes and 53 seconds. Like that's ridiculous. 4 minutes and 53 seconds on a
Right,
song
right.
in today's day and age. Like most of them are like 2.5 minutes, and they're just saying the same chorus over and over again for like like 1:30 of that. But anyway, as far as the anthem goes, that's definitely going over. Coin toss stuff, heads or tails? What are you thinking?
Tails.
Tails. Actually, heads has been dominating in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
4 of the past 5 Super Bowls, heads was the result of the coin toss, and it's 9-5. Heads is since Super Bowl 43 in 2009. So they say tails never fails. Well, apparently it fails in the Super Bowl quite a bit, and you know I'm going against the trend though. I'm going to say tails. Like
Super
there's
Bowl
no way.
43 was a good one, by the way.
No, yeah. What was that? The Steelers one or something?
Yeah, San Antonio Holmes.
Oh, yeah, 2009. That's what I was. Oh, of course. See, Jets should have won that
There we go.
championship game.
Yep.
Yeah, ridiculous. They get off the bus. If they get off the bus, plane, whatever you want to call it. If the Jets show up to that game before it was already too late, they would have won. Anyway, I'll always say that. That was absolutely ridiculous. God, Super Bowl 2009. So far away already. This is some other one that FanDuel and FanDuel Canada have supposedly had in the past, and they might have it again for this game. They do have odds for it. What will be mentioned first during the Super Bowl MVP speech? Team and teammates is the favorite at -120. City and fans at +325. Religion +370. Family is +690. Coaches +1200, and the team owner is +2500. And that's still somehow not long enough odds. I couldn't imagine the Super Bowl MVP being like, "Yeah, I'd like to thank my team owner here. Like, thank God for him." At +2500, +25 million, would never want to take that. It's definitely team and teammates. I think you have to take the favorite here.
Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious.
Will a player propose after the game? Yes is +400. No is -650.
Let's see, where are we at? Glendale.
Right around Valentine's Day.
Yeah. No. Not gonna
No.
happen.
All right. Some of the I'll say yes. I feel like there's some crazy person is gonna want to do it in front of all the cameras and stuff like that. There's always
Wait,
one in every crowd.
waiting for that moment.
Yeah, I won't give you a prediction on who that's going to be because I don't have the time or the desire to scroll through everybody's social media accounts.
Figuring it out. Yeah.
Yeah, I put my detective hat on. Bovada, which is an offshore book, is offering which chip company commercial will air first? Doritos at -130 or Pringles at +100? That one probably is going to be Doritos. Like I feel like early first
Yeah, I feel
quarter.
like Doritos owns the Super Bowl in
Yeah,
terms of the chips company and all that.
they have to get in early all the
Yeah.
time. They just have to remind you that you're like that they're there, and it's probably just a situation where it's like, oh, in case the game's a blowout, like we're gonna pay for
Right.
the
Get your
first quarter
attention
ahead.
early.
Yeah, the Mets, believe it or not, also by the way, are having a Super Bowl ad this year. I can't wait to see what that's all about.
I mean, of course, Steve Cohen money.
Steve Cohen is out here just spending billions of dollars on the Mets roster, and then he's dropping like $7 million on a 30-second Super Bowl ad. Like to have that kind of money in my bank account, oh my god, I can only imagine. Like seriously, a couple $100 million on a piece of art, you
Would be
know,
nice.
$7 million for 30 seconds. Like I couldn't imagine. It must be nice. They released like a teaser for it or something. It's apparently some sort of big offer that they're doing. And like Mr. Met is in an empty ticket office and he's like just showing you around or whatever. I don't know. It's kind of weird. We'll see what happens though. First snack company to air the commercial first. We have M&M's at -150 or Doritos at +150. So honestly, I think you have to take Doritos because if Doritos is going over Pringles, I'm thinking that's the first quarter. And there's no way the M&M's one is going to be that early because we obviously just got rid of the spokes candies, and M&M's is like going to have to build up to that. Like green M&M is not going to show up and just start, promoting themselves during the Super Bowl. I feel like that's closer to halftime, maybe third quarter. Doritos is coming early in this game. +150 for Doritos to air earlier in the game just feels like a steal.
That feels like value.
I love this analysis. It's so great. Then we have the beer brand commercial to air first. Budweiser, Heineken, both -150. Gotta love these. I love the beer commercials. They're probably I don't even drink, but I love the beer commercials. They're some of the best ones usually. Budweiser always goes earlier.
Yes.
Then I have probably the favorite of a lot of people is the Gatorade one. So this is where the analysis comes in.
This is your real expertise. You gotta let the
I
people know.
I do. So I've hit the Gatorade prop. Lovely listeners out there. I've hit it 3 years in a row now. For reference, I've only been able to gamble for 3 years legally. So therefore, legally, I've hit the Gatorade 3 years in a row. So this is where my expertise comes into play. Do you have a Gatorade take for the people before we rock
Yellow's
on
the
this?
best Gatorade. That's all I got.
See, I feel like yellow is in the top three. It's probably number two, but blue is number one. I feel like blue is definitely the most popular. And the fact that you're going yellow and zigging and zagging here, I don't know how to feel about that.
Well, that's how I feel. So
I mean, the Chiefs went with yellow end zones for this game too. I kind of like the yellow end zone look though. I prefer it over the red. That's my personal preference.
I'm cool with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. So BetMGM has listed the Gatorade colors dating all the way back to 2001 with the Ravens who won that Super Bowl. They had yellow. Now the last three Super Bowls, 2020 when the Chiefs won, orange. The Bucks in 2021 was blue, and the same for the Rams in 2022. When the Eagles won in 2018, they went with yellow. So yellow appears on this list quite a bit. Blue appears on this list quite a bit. The favorite in the clubhouse here is orange at +250. Yellow or green is +350. Then we have water at +600. Also blue at +600. Red is +650. Purple is +900. And no Gatorade bath at all is +1700. There's two bets that you have to make on this. The first one is you have to take the leader in the clubhouse. You have to go with the orange. So obviously orange, like yellow is pretty obvious. Like I said, Chiefs went with yellow end zones. The Eagles, when they won, went with yellow. The Chiefs went with orange last time around. But this is the reason why you take the orange. So obviously, I already think that the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. And you might be saying, oh, that's stupid. Why would they do orange like two Super Bowl wins in a row? This is why. because of the fact that they hate the Cincinnati Bengals. You can't possibly tell me after all of that nonsense that they went through against Cincinnati, it's a great rivalry that's brewing right now. If the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, there's no way you're convincing me that they aren't going with orange as a way to try and stick it to Cincinnati. You have a take on that? I feel like that's super clear.
That is great analysis. Clear, concise. We get it. I'm good with it. It actually makes sense. It's logical.
All right.
Orange is the play.
So orange is definitely like I said, you have to make 2 bets on this. So orange is the obvious one because of the fact of the rivalry there. The other one is red. So obviously the Chiefs' primary color is red. So you're looking at red, yellow, orange. There's not really a correlation between who wins the Super Bowl and whatever color Gatorade they drink. Like that's something that everybody always seems to think of, like that's going to happen. Like typically whatever the primary color is of the team is going to be the favorite that year. Not really the way that it works when you look back in history here, although there are some teams that have had that. But the one color that sticks out that has not been used since at least 2001 is red. Red is arguably a top 3 Gatorade. And there is no way that red has not made an appearance since 2001. So you get, in this case, you're getting the Chiefs' primary color and a Gatorade that is long overdue to be used at a nice plus 650 on the return. Red and orange. Those are your 2 Gatorade bets to make for Super Bowl. What Super Bowl is this?
57.
Yeah, Super Bowl 57. I lost count. Yeah. Those are your 2 bets to make Gatorade wise for Super Bowl 57. Orange at plus 250 and red at plus 650. You can get those odds at BetMGM Sportsbook. Not sponsored, I don't think. But if they'd like to sponsor, they could come hit me up.
Absolutely.
You have a red take?
No, I just think that is interesting that since 2001 it has not been used because I agree with you. In the top 3 of Gatorades, for it not to be used for over 20 years is pretty interesting.
See, this is the kind of analysis that you get when you come here.
Can't get it anywhere else.
So, I just personally, I'm going out on a limb, and I just feel like somebody, if you're out there listening and you're preparing the Gatorade on the sidelines for Sunday, I don't care what the players request. You have to make red Gatorade because it's not fair that the red Gatorade has been just forgotten about for all these years. I mean, people need to know this. Like when you go to the supermarket, whatever your supermarket of choice is, there's plenty of red Gatorade on the shelf. It's definitely one of the ones you're picking up. If blue or yellow isn't there, definitely the number 1 choice. But either way, it's definitely, like I said, in the top 3. And the fact that it hasn't been used. As a matter of fact, clear Gatorade, whatever you want to call it, or water, as it's also known, that's appeared like pretty often in the grand scheme of things. But the fact that red isn't here really kind of ticks me off. And I feel like I feel like there should be a new hashtag. We should do like justice for red Gatorade.
Right.
Justice for red Gatorade.
Not Zach Wilson now or Kyrie, but red Gatorade. That's just for them.
All
right. Yeah.
I don't really have anything else unless you wanted to talk about like some actual player prop type things, and in the sense that like I don't know. I don't really have any odds listed for them. I just found this snazzy little Super Bowl prop paper where it was like, oh, you could print it out and I don't know, stick it on your fridge or something. I don't know. What do people do with it? Like, why would you print this out? I don't know. Somebody made it. They were like, this is going to be good for our site.
No, oh good.
No free
tremendous contact on the prop bets. Tremendous. So let's wrap it here. Score, prediction. And well, we know that you know your winner, but score, Super Bowl MVP.
I will go with, so the over-under is actually set at 50.5 on FanDuel right now. And I said, I feel like the game winds up going under in the end because everybody always wants to put a Super Bowl over. So I'm going to put it just under the total. And I'm going to go with 26-24 Kansas City with the victory. Snazzy 50 points right there. Everybody's going to be begging for a last-second field goal or something to put that over the total. It's not going to happen. So 26-24 Kansas City. And I'd really like to go out on a limb and give you a wacky Super Bowl MVP, but like I just feel like that's such a fool's errand at this point in time. Like If Philly wins, it's going to be Jalen Hurts. If Kansas City wins, it's going to be Patrick Mahomes. So Kansas City is winning the game. I have to go with Patrick Mahomes. Um, if I find a long shot while you're talking about this, I could be a long
Okay.
shot. But Super Bowl MVP, it's going to be Patrick Mahomes.
Okay. So I agree with you. I just slightly disagree. So, and you'll see what I mean. I got 27-24 Kansas City. We're pretty much in that same score range.
This
All
is
that
awful.
stuff. Yeah, I know. It's so bad. It's definitely not gonna happen now. Super
Mm.
Bowl MVP. I do agree with you. Like, it's gonna be Patrick Mahomes. If Kansas City wins, he'll be too dominant. It's like, all right, maybe Kelsey goes off, but like that means then Patrick Mahomes is going off. So that's my kind of only way. It's not him, but I think it will be him, and they will win. However, I do disagree. If it is Philadelphia, I don't believe it will be Jalen Hurts. I believe it will be Miles Sanders.
Oh, a
That's my
running
team.
back.
Yeah. They're run oriented. I could see if they win, I could see him going for 90 to 100, and get 2 touchdowns, something like that. And then Jalen Hurts as an okay guy, and they give it to Miles Sanders. I could see that scenario.
Wow. I was actually my guess of who you were going to take other than Jalen Hurts was actually going to be Hassan Reddick because I feel like if it's going to be somebody like outside of Jalen Hurts, I feel like it's going to be somebody on defense. And unfortunately, the voters can't give it to Jason Kelsey no matter how much they want to. Um, so I felt like it was going to be on defense. As far as a long shot goes, once again, I don't like the idea of it's like you said, if Travis Kelsey has a great game, it's going to Mahomes. So
Right.
it just doesn't even feel like it makes sense to even bet on Travis Kelsey to win the MVP, even though he might be deserving of it. Like I can't even figure out like what would Travis Kelsey's stat line need to be to win Super Bowl MVP. Like I don't even know if 15 catches gets him there
Yeah,
because it's
it's
still Mahomes throwing him the ball.
right. It would be Mahomes only really going to him. Mahomes has like 250 on a day, maybe a pick, 1 touchdown, 2 touchdowns. It's all to Kelsey, and Kelsey has like 125 of it. He has like half of his yardage and just 10, 11 catches. I would say that's the scenario. Um, so if we count, and I guess odds wise, Miles Sanders is probably a long shot. I
Yeah.
love that as a long shot. If we're going further as a long shot, like I'll go Jarek McKinnon.
Nick Sirianni all the way down the list.
McKinnon gets in the end zone a couple. I do. I think if it's because I don't think like receiver. We have seen it. Be a receiver in other Super Bowls, but I just don't have that feel for it, especially Philadelphia side of it. If they win it, I really do think it would be Miles Sanders.
See, I actually thought about a way that Travis Kelsey could win Super Bowl MVP, and it's actually a great storyline now, and I might actually have to stick with this. So, Andy, obviously, here we go. We're gonna talk about the overworked storylines now. So, Travis Kelsey, Jason Kelsey, that dynamic. Andy Reid,
Yeah.
former coach of the Chiefs. All of a sudden, now I'm thinking about what could we do to make this even more insufferable, and we can have Travis Kelsey throwing the game-winning touchdown pass on a Philly special, but not to say Patrick Mahomes because they don't want to Chad Henne because they take Mahomes out of the game because of the ankle injury or just somebody else. I think Travis
Right.
Kelsey, in order to win Super Bowl MVP, will have to throw a touchdown in order to win it. I don't
And he
think,
can do it. He can do it. He played
yes,
quarterback, so he is capable of doing that.
yes, they're going to go all the way down the playbook. Travis Kelsey, you heard it here first. He's going to throw a touchdown pass. That's his way to win Super Bowl MVP. But as far as actual long shots go, that I think have a chance, I feel like I said, if it's not the quarterbacks, it's going to have to be somebody on defense. And we've seen it happen before. Guys like Von Miller have obviously been able to capture Super Bowl
Mhm.
MVP based on being able to wreck the game on defense. Um, Chris Jones and Frank Clark come to mind from Kansas City. But Chris Jones he's been with Kansas City forever. He's obviously had a major part. He just got his first career playoff sack in the AFC Championship game. He is currently plus 5,000 on FanDuel. I have not shopped that number around, so you have to do some shopping on your own time, guys and gals. But plus 5,000 for Chris Jones. If he comes up with a couple of sacks, maybe forces a fumble or a turnover, and they do a good job in shutting down that Eagles running game, I could definitely see him having a pathway to getting that Super Bowl MVP. But actually, my favorite narrative is just Travis Kelce throwing a Philly special style touchdown or something to win the Super Bowl. They would never stop talking about that one.
That would be tremendous if that takes place. All right. This is Sports Conversation on the Believe Network with James Navalance, Nick Brinkerhoff. Yeah, this is the longest one, but that is not as a surprise. We went into great detail on these insufferable teams and our Super Bowl preview. So nothing but greatness coming out of this one.
Never mind the fact that we talked for a half hour before we even got started. But I appreciate you having me on. Thank you. Thank you to all my fans out there too.